to the program. So now we exit productivity in the agriculture sector, following the celebration of the World Food Day, to productivity of the workforce today. There is a fair consensus that the future of Nigeria's development is anchored on, prioritizing human capital development. So how do we motivate the workforce amid, the very real economic challenges? So joining us on the program this morning to look at this is Malam Ladan Gobir. He is the president, CIPM, that's the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for joining us, and good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, Bukola. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's good to have you. I've set the tone already for the first salvo, which would be the very obvious challenges that we have now. And just to put it in proper context, we were dealing with continuing increase in the pump price of petrol, which has also seen diminishing incomes because of the value of the currency. And coupled with that, there's so many bills that, a typical average member of the workforce has to, deal with. And there are reports, of course, that we're spending 70% of income on food. So where is the income, that will go to food amid so many other competing bills? How does an average member of the workforce stay motivated amid these challenges?
Okay, thank you very much, Bukola. First, we're talking about human capital development. Human capital development is the engine of growth and development, of course, for any country. Without investment in people, sustainable progress, of course, cannot be achieved by any country at all. So the human capital development, of course, is very vital for economic prosperity in any country, social stability, and of course, to ensure global competitiveness. HCD, as we call it, of course, in HR, involves, of course, enhancing the skills, the knowledge, and the productivity of the workforce. All of this, of course, directly contribute to socio-economic development. Now, to your question, how do we then, of course, enhance the productivity, of the workforce? I think basically for us in Nigeria, with a population that is said to be about 220 million, at least as at the 2023 estimates, being the largest, of course, population that we have in Africa. Some of the challenges that we have had to deal with around human capital development, of course, are challenges around unemployment, skills mismatch, education deficit, and the fact that our global ranking today in the Human Capital Index, of course, sits at 150 out of about 157 countries. So what do we need to do, to ensure that at least the workforce and our people remain productive? We think that first we must continue to build capacity. Now, in building capacity, we must ensure, of course, that the skills that are being built, are such that helps either in the public or private sector, of course, to engender growth, in the economy, and that the services, of course, that are provided are such that enables growth, in the economy. Now, how do we intend to do this, or how must we continue to do this? We must continue, of course, to look at youth employment and skills training. And we must ensure that at all times we prioritize, because we are a nation that has a youth unemployment index of about 42.5%. Now, the unemployment index, of course, following the NBS statistics, about 33.3%. 100%. Youth unemployment alone, of course, constitutes 42.5% of that. So we must continue to invest, of course, in growing youth employment and, of course, and in skills training for our youth. Now, the other thing that we must also do is to ensure that the right kind of environment is created, for workers to thrive.
Right.
And we can do this not only by providing training opportunities for workers, whether in the public or private sector, but by ensuring, of course, like we always say, that we pay the right kind of wage for the right kind of work that is done. We now have a minimum wage that is set to be 70,000 naira. Soon after, of course, that minimum wage was announced, the prices of PMS have gone up, by several percentum, and if you look at the increase that we had in terms of the minimum wage,
right,
from 30,000 to 70,000, which is a little over 100%, compared to the kind of increases that we have had, of course, for PMS alone, not even talking about the price, the price of other products in the market, other commodities that workers have to access. You will find that there is no correlation at all between this. So then you begin to wonder, how does someone who is on the minimum wage, how is he able, for example, to maintain a family of 4 or a family of 6, provide for them food on a daily basis, pay school fees for their children, pay house rent for whatever part, in whatever part of the country, of course, it is that they live.
Well,
now, for those who are outside,
right,
either the organized private sector or in government, those who, of course, are working outside the organized work environment.
Right.
Those who have to farm, those who have to do petty trading. You also look at what comes to them at the end of the day or at the end of the month. What is their total earnings compared to what they have to pay for services, that the government provides, or for services, of course, that even others provide.
Let me come in here.
People have to pay taxes.
Right.
So we must continue to have these conversations,
Indeed.
Around what would be a good or a take-home pay for anyone, of course, who works in an organized work environment,
right,
or those who even work in the private sector.
I remember when last
challenge around the fact that, of course, that what people earn today can no longer take them home.
And I remember last time we had you on the show about 4 months ago, and we talked about minimum wage. At that time, the negotiation was still ongoing, so people were thinking, will it be 150,000? And then, Labour came out of that meeting with the president and said, well, the president said, you have to choose one. Either prices of, petrol keeps going up, and then we give you the 150, or we give you the 70 plus, and the price stays the same. Clearly, that hasn't happened. If anything, the price of petrol has gone up at least 2 times since then, and we're doing plus 1,000 naira. But here's a point I'm trying to make. When people are stuck in the survival part, there's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So people are trying to survive, the physiological needs. They can't skip all the way to the esteem point, which is the training that you talk about, because they're trying to survive. So they're not thinking about training, esteem, or self-actualization. They're just basically trying to feed, get home with their salary. So we find ourselves in a very interesting situation. People would rather pay premium to money, wages. Give me money first. Don't spend that money on training. Spend that money in paying my salary. But then we still need to get our workforce productive, more efficient, in line with, the current trends. So really, how difficult is this decision for employers and employees themselves who have to spend either their funds or time in training themselves sometimes?
Okay, thank you, Kayode. You see, the challenge really, I think, is with the fact that even for employers, not many are able to pay employees as much as they would even desire to pay. And this is because for employers who also have to, for example, import raw materials because they are not available in the country, pay so much for diesel, pay so much in terms of the multiple taxes that they have to deal with, harvest water, which they have to use because these facilities are not available. All of these, of course, translates, into the cost of production for the businesses. At the end of the day, it is not the whole gamut of the total cost of production that the businesses are able to transfer, to the end users. Of course, but they do transfer, and that's why the cost of products, keep going up. As soon as you have a PMS cost, of course, reviewed, businesses, of course, also go back to the drawing board to look what comes, what do we need, to put into producing what we produce. Now, human capital, human resource, is also a factor, of production, perhaps the most important, but it is the least, beneficiary of increases that you get. For example, an employer who requires to import raw materials to continue production, no matter what the cost is, they still go on to import these materials. If customs increases custom fees, employers will still go ahead and pay. But employers are unable, to increase wages, of employees to meet the kind of increases that we're seeing, for example, in PMS cost or in other factors of production. So for both the employer and the employee, it's like a catch-22 situation. The employer, of course, expects to be paid very well by the employer. A fair day's pay, we say, for a fair day's work. The employer also, quite a number of employers desire to pay, their employees very well. But the challenge oftentimes, of course, with them is the fact that their market sizes are also shrinking, and because, like Bukola said earlier on, it's only when an employee is fed very well and is able to provide for his or her family, pay school fees, pay house rent, pay transportation costs, before they begin to think, about what other needs, they have to meet. First, they try to meet their basic needs. So people are no longer even thinking about, okay, we have to go on vacations, we have to go on holiday. Like we all know and like we all say, we no longer have a middle class, even in Nigeria. So to the point, around what should employers be doing or what can employees also do? The truth is that, like we always say, employers can only pay what they can afford to pay. The concern is usually around affordability. No employer wants to pay wages only to end up after 3, 4, 6 months to go and close shops. And I think employees also understand that, well, things are very bad, but we must continue to ensure that our businesses survive so that at least we have we have some work to do. and at the end of the day, we also get paid at least our wages at the end of the day.
And as you have rightly said, pardon me there, it sure looks like a choice between the rock and the hard place, the competing needs. But let's look at what governments and the private sector, maybe more of governments, are supposed to be doing. I'm looking at a report by Budget now, and it says that 11 states spent more on overhead costs than on capital expenditure. And this is evidence-based, but we would think that, the subnationals are spending more on infrastructure and on human capital development, the workforce now in this case. So if this is the case, we don't know the data for the more recent years now, but if this is the case, why is this not reflecting in an improvement in the well-being and capacity of the workforce, as you said earlier?
Well, a lot of the subnationals, of course, like you said, are investing in infrastructure development. The argument is that we need to do this so that over time, of course, it will help improve our economic base. It will enlarge the economic base. People will have access to job opportunities, and then people will also have access, to some sort of funding. People have access to some sort of pay or wages at the end of the month. But again, whilst infrastructure development is very, very important and is very, very key, and it's something that we must all, continue to encourage both the national and the subnationals to continue to do. You cannot take your eyes away from human capital development and capacity building for human capital. Now, and we keep talking about capacity building, talent management, paying the right kind of wage for the right kind of work. Because even for the infrastructural development that we're talking about, you need people, to engineer these developments. You need people to manage this infrastructure at the end of the day, even when they have been put in place. And that's why we keep saying the most important element in all of this conversation today still remains the human capital. So whether at the national or at the subnational level, we keep making the argument that there's a need not only to grow the human capital, not only to develop human capital, not only to ensure, that your workforce are properly remunerated, they are properly paid, that we must also ensure the well-being and the welfare, of the workforce, whether in the public service or in the private sector.
And I imagine that these are the conversations, right? I imagine that these are the conversations that will happen today at the International Conference and Exhibition, because a lot of people are wondering why are you in Abuja, but clearly there's a lot more that they will be getting at the conference today, which continues today, I should say. And I know that you have to run right now, but I know that there's way more at the conference. Thank you so much, Sir Bukola.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to feedback from that conference. We must anchor at this point, and thank you so much for your time. We've been speaking with Mr. Hamid Ladan Gobir, President, Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, and a corporate lawyer. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
And from this point, we'll move to the softer side of things, as we say, for an exciting conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.